hot pad on a wet top of a jar, reaching out of the hot water bath is going to mean that your hot pad is going to get soaking wet, and then what's going to happen?
And then you get burned.
And then you drop the jar, and then you have a mess.
Right.
So make sure that on your wish list of things that you get, and both of these items, this and this, are under $5. So any hardware store, any kitchen gadget place, sometimes even in the grocery store on the bubble pack hooks. So those are easy to find. And remembering that your dome lids are one use only. The rings you can use over and over and over again. Make sure you wash them after you've taken them off the jar, because they will have residue in them. Let them dry thoroughly, and then store them away for the next time you want a can. And one of the things that Stephanie and I have found when we do workshops is I bring in my rings for the workshop, and I bring them in on a coat hanger, because in that way all my regular lid rings are on one hanger, and all my largemouth rings are on another hanger, so I can just grab them as I need them. They stay clean, they stay dry.
Clean and dry.
And so that way I can use them over and over again. And so those you can recycle. But these, the only way to recycle these is to use them on dry products like pastas or flour mixes or things like that, where you're just wanting to keep it closed but not sealed.
Right.
But don't reuse them, even though they look like they're going to be okay, because this rubber gasket that's on these lids will get soft, and that's what causes the lid to stay on the jar in the heating process. And even though visually it may look like there's no dent in it, microscopically there is. And so you don't want to use them, because you're going to end up having spoiled food along the way. And so that pickling is a lot of fun. It's something that you can take your personality and add to it. It's great fun. The other one that you can do with pickling is flavored vinegars. Ooh. And that's gotten to be a real popular item in the last few years, with using herbs and especially herb gardens are real popular. And so we actually have a category at the county fair of flavored vinegars. Wow. And the key to the flavored vinegars is just like anything, because as soon as you add anything to vinegar, it starts going basic. And herbs can be washed and everything, but there's no herb that's an acid.
Right.
And so you pack your pretty bottle with the herbs, and then you pour the hot vinegar on top of it, and then people put a cork on it, and then they leave it out on the counter.
Done it. It's spoiled.
It's spoiled.
All
not
kinds
good.
Of
all
fluffy
sorts of
mold.
And so you have to process it. And so you need to, if you're going to use the fancy bottles, you need to make sure again that they've got a domed bottom on them so they won't break, and also a pot tall enough to accommodate to heat the whole bottle.
Right.
And most of us don't have that kind of pot.
And would you do a hot water bath or a pressure?
Hot water bath.
Hot water baths.
And then what you need to do is put the cork on it and then wax seal the cork.
Okay.
So that way no germs from the atmosphere can sneak back down through the cork and into your vinegar. And then once you've opened it, you need to keep it in the refrigerator.
Okay.
So that way it doesn't spoil. And even if you're buying commercially flavored vinegars, which a lot of us have,
right,
that once you've opened them, they need to go in the refrigerator because of the flavorings in them. Garlic flavored vinegar is a real popular one. And garlic is one of the biggest culprits at going bad, and you don't know it till you're sick.
Right.
And so doing water packed garlic or oil packed garlic is not a good idea. If you've got garlic extra in the garden, which I do because I grow garlic, is that I make sure that I chop it up and I freeze it. And we'll talk about freezing another time. But doing, just putting them out on the counter, and when you go to the decorator stores or you see the Martha Stewart kitchens where they've got all these pretty bottles on the counter, don't eat anything that's in them. They're only pretty because they just, they're not food safe. And, people give gifts of these at Christmas time and holiday time. And I always want to put a beware, do not eat on them because people don't know. They think that because they're in vinegar, they're going to be safe. But they really aren't. So we have to be careful. So we do have a publication from the Extension Office on flavored vinegars and how to handle them. But they're also available in both the Blue Book and the Kerr Book, which you can buy at any of the local bookstores that have these kinds of information in it for food safety as well as recipes. The one thing we want to warn you about is to make sure that you may have inherited your grandma's Blue Book, which I did, But those were printed in 1948, and the rules have changed since 1948. And so check and make sure you've got one of the most up-to-date. I think the last updated one was done in 1998. And there may be a 2000, 2002, but the times got changed in 98 to a longer time period. And so the idea of doing something 10 minutes is old-fashioned at this point. And so you really have to follow the rules so you do have a successful product.
Right. And I've learned from you that changed because the way we get our food has changed, and our food is being grown differently.
Right, exactly. And, you know, the transportation, I mean, if you have a garden and you know what you put on your garden to make your garden grow, and then you take it from the garden and you put it in your kitchen and you wash it up and then you start processing it, that's one thing.
Right.
But many of us will go to the farmer's market, which is a wonderful avenue to get food, and they grow it, but we don't know where, and we don't know how long ago it was picked, or how it was transported. And then if you get out into the bigger field of, you know, fruit markets and things like that, the expansion of questions becomes bigger.
Right.
And then the other part of it, I hate to say, is that our kitchens aren't as clean as they used to be, simply because we don't cook our breakfast and our lunch and our dinner and wash the floor every day.
Yep.
I mean, some of us are lucky enough to get one meal a day in the kitchen, in the microwave. And so, you know, it's a different lifestyle. So the chances of contamination are much higher now than they were, say, in our grandmother's day, when they were still doing canning in the oven, or, you know, in open pots on top of the wood stove and things like that. So we're real lucky that way.
Better to be safe than sorry, so we end up with a product that we want to eat.
Right, want to eat, are safe to eat, and given as gifts are safe for our gift receivers as well, because it's not fun to get something that would cause you to be sick. So we need to remember that you don't use canning jars with wire bales anymore, because again, they're not considered food safe, especially the ones with the rubber rings on them. And some of us may have some of those. I use them for my pastas and my different flours and things like that. But we also don't want to use weck jars. And weck jars are those glass ones that have the glass lid that comes down. It's got a rubber ring, and then it comes down and it clips in place. Those are not safe to use for canning, because they don't have the dome on the bottom for the heating process, and the rubber ring doesn't seal.
Right, so again, just for storage.
Storage, canister kind of stuff. They can be used for dried fruit and things like that we're going to talk about in another segment. But we just need to remember, also don't use your half-gallon, gallon, 2-gallon jars that we may have inherited or found at an auction or at an antique store, because they're wonderful. But again, use them for dry storage. Don't try to can with them, because we can't get the heat all the way through the jar in a timely manner to keep the heat even, to make sure that all the